Welcome to the Become Sensible podcast, where we discuss practical accounting, finance, and tax for everyday business. I'm your host, Fiona, and I'm here to show you that no matter what your business financial situation is, you can change it. Good morning, Business Bestie, and thank you so much for tuning today. We have a special guest, Kaitlyn Carlson. She is a certified financial advisor, and she is the founder and CEO of Theory Planning Partners, a boutique wealth creation firm for the top female entrepreneur in the United States. Before launching the Theory Planning Partners, Kaitlyn spent majority of her career in the UPS Financial Service Inc., where she held the roles for both southern and northeastern region of the United States. There, she developed more than 300 financial plans for the clients with the assets ranging from $500,000 to $1 billion. Subsequently, she became an advisor on private wealth management team that managed over $600 million for a few dozen families. Her career began in the asset management with the Vietnam investment. Kaitlyn is a certified financial planner and certified Access planning advisor and accredited wealth management advisor. Outside of the work, she is a spiritual seeker, ravenous to understand why we are here and how to make a meaningful life. If you're listening to this episode, you will learn a little bit more about that. She actually study about psychologies and how we make the decision and how our behavior. That makes so much sense in terms of the work that she does right now is help people to achieve the financial goal through the financial advisor. So Kaitlyn lives in Marblehead, Massachusetts with her husband Jake and their son Russell and Luke. I can't wait to share with you the conversation with her. Good morning, Kaitlyn.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on, Fiona.
We are so grateful to have you today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, what led you to become a financial planner, and how you start your own company?
Yeah, so I guess it goes all the way back to my college days. I initially thought that I was going to be an econ major in college. And then when I finally got to college, realized that I fell in love with psychology. So I ended up majoring in psychology because I was just fascinated by how we're wired and why we make certain decisions and the way that society is formed. And so even though I majored in psych, I always saw myself going into finance. So right out of college, I went into asset management. And when I was working for the asset management firm, I learned about the financial advisor career path. And I thought that is such a cool marriage between my interests of finance and psychology. So pretty early on in my career, I knew I wanted to be a financial advisor. And so I was in that management rotational program for 2 years and then ended up moving over to wealth management. And I initially entered the industry as a financial planner. And that was back in 2014, 2015. And at that point in time, taking a holistic approach and a financial planning approach was still very new. It still is very new to a lot of the industry. Most of the advisors that I was working with were really those brokers that you think of from the 80s and 90s and had never used a financial planning software before. So my whole job for the first 2 years I was in wealth management was really to educate financial advisors on financial planning and actually do financial plans for their clients. So I did that for 2 years. I got my certified financial planning designation and my accredited wealth management advisor designation. And then after I graduated from that program, I became a private wealth advisor. So that's when I started working with billionaire families, centimillionaire families, legacy wealth, really actually super interesting because most of the families, the majority of the population doesn't even know, but it's just kind of like that whole ultra high net worth ecosystem and world that I started operating in. But I kept thinking back to my time as a financial planner, and there were two things that I did not see while I was a planner that really bothered me. The first one was I didn't see any women. So I worked with over 300 clients, and they were all men. None of them were self-made women. And so that was really difficult for me to be a woman in her 20s and have no role models, no one to look up to. And that was a huge passion of mine. So part of my mission with theory is, okay, if I can't find them, then I'll create them. So a huge part of our mission is creating the high net worth female millionaires. That's a huge part of our mission. The other part of it is, as a planner, when I was working with business owners, oftentimes I would be blindsiding them with bad information, such as you have to work for another 20 years, or you have to save $300,000 a year, which is obviously a huge ask of a business owner, potentially. Or I would say you have to live off of Social Security, which might be 70,000, and they're used to living off of 400,000. So there's this huge gap in terms of knowledge and being equipped for retirement or financial independence, whatever you want to call it. And when I reflected on that, for me, I realized that it came down to the compensation model, which in wealth management is typically an asset under management model. So Theory's big mission, in addition to working exclusively with women, is working exclusively with female entrepreneurs and really teaching them how to utilize their business to create personal wealth. And the best way for us to do that is through a flat fee structure. So I was very intentional about honoring those two things, helping business owners and helping women specifically. And so that's really the background behind the mission of why I created Theory Planning Partners.
That is fantastic. I mean, like, you went to college for psychologists and behaviors and learning, and then you eventually married the behavior side and with the math side of it. Which is thing like fantastic because there's lack of the people would understand how we actually make a decision. I read hundreds of books about psychologies and how we make decisions and behavior and all that. So I fantastic to learn that.
It is really fun. Some people find it more fun than others. I totally nerd out on it. My sister was pretty bored by it. So everyone has their own passion.
Yeah, and that's why I think like the book The Psychology of Money was a hit.
Yeah.
And he talked about that side of how we subconsciously make decisions that is not very rational at all.
Yes. I love that book and I love the author as well.
You also have similar interests to me that like after year of working with these wealthy or big corporations, you think that there's lack of women in those positions and have an opportunity to actually think about building wealth. So do you think that like what was the main reason that we in that place? And what should we do if we start to think about plan for our own financial success?
So, I mean, we have to acknowledge that part of it is systemic. I mean, it
Yeah.
really wasn't until the 1970s that a woman could open a bank account on her own.
Yeah.
It's crazy because my mom was born during that time. So it's wild to think how recent it is that women actually had access to creating their own wealth. And so I think with each generation, we'll see women become more and more empowered around that. But certainly, even still, there's a lot of conditioning, and the wealth management space is still an incredibly male dominated space.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of intimidation around investing, and it's just its whole own ecosystem, and it has jargon, and a lot of people would like to make you think that it's super complex. And for a long time on Wall Street, people were paid really well for complexity. And people were paid really well for, I have access to information that you don't. So fortunately, the vanguards of the world have really been pioneers in making investments more accessible, more affordable. So that's in part thought leaders within the industry, but also technology has brought about a lot of democratization of information, I like to say. So now that the industry is moving in the direction of the consumer, it's really on us as women to say, I can learn this and I can create well. I've never heard a man say, oh, I'm not that good with money, or like, oh, I find that intimidating. Like, men just don't really come out and say things like that. Whereas women very easily come out and say, oh, I just don't understand investing. Like, it scares me. Just that dichotomy between the two genders is really fascinating, especially as a psych major, because I'm like, why are women so willing to say, like, I find investing scary, and then men don't admit that? And it's actually been statistically proven that women are better investors than men,
It
but
is.
but they don't feel as empowered around investing itself. And so that is a gap that we are really trying to close just by creating a safe and nurturing and judgment-free space and really taking our client's hand, like holding our client's hand through the process and educating them along the way, because education is really the starting point for creating wealth. I mean, that's where I love the phrase knowledge is power. When it comes to wealth creation, knowledge really is power.
I totally agree with you on the facts that's why we as women have a strong belief that we are not good with money, we're not good with math. Anything like quantitative, we will not be like very good with it. But there's no data to back up for that belief at all.
Right.
I think partially because the way the education system too, like younger girls will like go to these things like more arts, more dance, more other like beautiful thing than more than the heart. But it's also, I mean, like the society probably is moving to more direction of like more equal opportunity for whether it's science or math for the woman. But I think it's take like generation to change that belief too. So if a business owner now just started and they interested to build their own wealth and prepare for, like, for example, retire in next like 10 years,
Mhm.
work become like an optional for them. Where should they start it?
So I love this question because the answer is that step one is free.
Yeah.
And so step one is really as easy as going to Google and typing in retirement calculator and figuring out what your number is. So if you want to be work optional or financially free in 10 years and you want to be able to spend $20,000 a month because that's what you spend now, that's a simple equation. You just have to go to Google, type in retirement calculator. NerdWallet has a great one.
Mm.
The calculator will spit out for you, okay, if you are looking to achieve that, you need to build let's say, a $4 million portfolio,
Mm.
which means you need to be saving $10,000 a month for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
That is simple, easy, free information, and it is super valuable to have
Yeah.
on day one of starting your business. Even if you are not making anything in your business, being aware that that number exists and needs to be funded is so powerful. So, like, I give the example of I've started my business and I ran that equation. So I knew my number, like, even when I was making $0, I knew my number was $13,000 a month, for example.
Mm.
And that helped me inform so many aspects of my business because I knew, okay, my business needs to go through all the maturity phases. I need to go from startup phase, which is a viability phase, to growth phase, to maturity phase, to wealth creation phase. As I'm moving through those phases, this $13,000 a month number is in the back of my head. So that helps me understand, okay, as I'm moving from viability startup phase into growth phase, now my company is covering my basic living expenses. I've
Mm.
replaced the salary that I was making before.
Yeah.
But what I see happen so often with entrepreneurs is when they're moving from that growth phase into that maturity phase, they start making more money than they've ever made before. And then they start running into what I call lifestyle creep, which is okay, I'm used to living off of $10,000 a month, but now I'm making $15,000 a month. So then they just start spending $15,000 a month and then maybe spending $20,000 a month. So it's just their lifestyle expenses are creeping up. Most of them are not even aware that this financial freedom number exists and has to be funded.
Yeah.
So they will just continue to spend without ever like acknowledging the number. And so that's like the number one mistake that I see business owners make is that lifestyle creep. If they have the awareness that, okay, now I've covered my living expenses, now I need to fund this $13,000 a month, then I can go back to enhancing my lifestyle. That's just going to create a very sustainable wealth creation journey for you over 10, 20, 30 years. And when you look up 30 years from now, you're not going to have any pressure around, oh my God, I need to save $300,000 a year for the next 5 years, or I need to sell my business. Because one other thing that I saw very often is people would be so desperate to secure their retirement that they would have to sell their business and they would think it was worth a lot more than it was. That's just an incredibly stressful place to be, especially after pouring your heart and soul into running a business for 3 decades.
Is and I totally agree. Anytime I work with clients, I also say, like, if you run your business, you need to know your personal life goal. Because if you don't have that vision inside and you don't know what you actually want in terms of the next 5 year, 10 year, or what's the lifestyle that you want in your life, then the business have a disconnection toward your personal life, and you build a business that you don't feel like you like it. Or if you always constantly scaling and growing and all of those things, and all your money is just going to fix that business, but on the personal side of it, you neglect everything that's important in your life. Eventually, you will hate that business because it's not something you actually mean to build it for. And so I totally agree that if they have that idea inside, bigger pictures, then everything when you make the decision in terms of the business is correlates to your personal life, and it's make the work that you do have like meaningful and connect to your personal life and goals too.
Yes, absolutely. Because if you're able to bring it back to your life goals, now you're introducing intention
Yeah.
into every decision that you make. And this is so important because Fiona, you and I met at Jordan Gill's event, and Jordan
Yeah.
talked about how she made 7 figures and she didn't feel anything. She kind of just felt like empty inside. It's like
Yeah.
that's because she was lacking context for like numbers are just numbers and you're not going to feel anything. But if you are able to say, I made it to 7 figures, and that means I can send my kid to the school that I want to send them to. That means I can take the vacations that I want to take with my family. Now you're introducing things that actually really matter to people. And that's what puts the soul into the business and the dollars. And really it's like the purpose that keeps us going more than anything.
Yeah, your wife. And of course, like we love to serve people. We have people, have clients, but if there's nothing that really connected into your personal life and all of the meaning in your personal life, the work that you do will lose the interest. And sometime eventually you just have like no interest in to the business you actually build for. So
And the irony is that most people start businesses so they can leave a job.
yeah.
Sometimes you just end up recreating a job for yourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
And the part of like managing the people also like very hard too. Like if you work for the corporates, you maybe like manage like 2 people, 3 people. If you have manager level or something, but now if you build a business to like 7 feature, multiple 7 feature, you have a 20 people to report to you, and that's also like a full time job of it itself too. So I mean like quite challenging if you don't feel like that business actually connected to your personal goal and vision and all the things that has meaning for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think like if we have that number, what should we do to learn more about the investing and move from knowing to actually doing that thing?
So certainly for business owners, the most important thing is your business is your original moneymaker, right? So
Yeah.
you have to secure the financial health of your business.
Yeah.
And that's where you come in, Fiona. That's why pretty much all of our clients work with fractional CFOs
Yeah.
because I'm a personal finance expert, but
Yeah.
I'm not a business finance expert.
Yeah.
So even like I have CFOs that I rely on for guidance because I want someone looking out for the financial health of my business. And I know that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
So that's very important to us that our clients are running a financially healthy business. And that's really for entrepreneurs, that's the most important starting place. So, how do we secure the financial health of your business and ensure recurring profitability?
Mm.
Once we have recurring profitability and we're covering our living expenses, that's when we want to start looking into, okay, now I'm moving into creating wealth and how do I allocate these dollars? And so this is the point in time where you should start looking into adding a CFP, a certified financial planner, to your team,
Mm.
because this is where we're getting into the territory of potential tax write-offs that could be creating wealth at the same time, such as a solo 401k plan, for example, or even just a regular 401k plan if you have employees. That's something where you can be lowering your adjusted gross income that year and creating wealth simultaneously. So we can be saving taxes and we can be working towards your wealth goals. There are a lot of wealth creation vehicles that are available to small business owners that are not available to employees. And so that's why it's really important to work with a professional because your job is to run the company. Your job is not to be fluent in all of the vehicles that are available, but some of them can make wealth creation happen like way faster than other vehicles. So
Yeah.
but to give a couple rules of thumb, I would say once you are past the recurring profitability and covering your living expenses, the first thing you want to focus on is building an emergency savings fund.
Mm.
So having 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in cash or cash equivalent. The great thing about where we are at right now in this economic environment is you can be putting money in a savings account and earning 5% on that money.
Yeah.
So everyone kind of sees it as like, oh my gosh, mortgage rates are so high. This is so terrible. But you have to look at the other side of the equation, and safer assets such as cash and bonds are actually yielding something, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool too. So it's really about like knowing how to play the game essentially and knowing the landscape. So focus on covering your living expenses, building your emergency savings fund. And then again, the third thing that you want to focus on is starting to take advantage of those wealth creation vehicles, such
Mm.
as retirement accounts. One of my favorite things about charging the flat fee structure that we do versus the AUM fee structure is
Mm.
sometimes real estate opportunities come up. So if we have super high income earners and they're interested in real estate, that's certainly something that we can look into that also has tax benefits as well.
Mm.
That's totally a personal preference thing. As someone who has 2 small children and I'm 8 months pregnant, the idea of, like, going out and looking into real estate opportunities is not very exciting to me. That's why I love the markets, because the markets are truly a passive wealth creation vehicle, whereas real estate is very hands-on. But again, all that to say, at that point in time, that's when you want to start introducing a professional into your life to help you brainstorm ways that align with your values and your passions and how to create wealth in that direction.
So I have a question. So if someone want to work with you, what is like normally the process that you have them? Like for example, they say I want to like retire in the next 10 years. I work optional, have a
Yeah.
little freedom, and for example, the net profits from the business like $200,000 per year. So how you take them from there to the goal that they have in their mind?
So we have an 8-step onboarding process.
Mm.
And usually when I'm presenting, I give the analogy of how wealth creation is going to be like scaling and descending a mountain.
Yeah.
And when I say scaling and descending a mountain, I'm talking about like over your lifetime. Like your
Yeah.
wealth creation journey is going to be across your entire life.
Yeah.
So ideally, we are creating a long-term partnership. So to figure out what that journey is going to look like, the first thing we have to do is set up base camp because we have to figure out where we're starting from.
Yeah.
So when we set up base camp with a client, the first thing we do is map out their net worth statement. We go through their cash flow with them. This is something that I actually didn't even do when I was in private wealth that I think is so important and that we do in theory now is we will actually go through and figure out what is your lifestyle number? What is it? What are you spending money on? Like, what does it take to live your lifestyle? So what's the income leaving the household? What's the income coming into the household? Are we running at a surplus? Are we running at a deficit? And then the last thing is the wealth protection aspect.
Mm.
So figuring out, okay, do we have any holes in exposure that we could potentially be blindsided by? Like a lot of entrepreneurs don't have umbrella policy, for example.
Yeah.
So you could potentially like be sued if your daughter's friend gets hurt at your house. Like those types of things happen and they can be blindsiding events.
Yeah.
Or we're looking at everything in your life. We're looking at your cash flow, your insurance, your estate planning documents, taxes, investments, all of it. So once we get base camp set up, then we're figuring out, okay, here's where we're starting from. The next thing we need to do is cast the vision. So where's the peak of the mountain? The peak of the mountain, we could have many peaks because the peak is your goals. So typically when I'm presenting, I just use that work optional date as the main peak because that will be the main peak in your lifetime. So that's when we cast the vision for, okay, I want to be work optional in 10 years. Then I want to be spending $20,000 a month. From there, it's our job to quantify that goal and come back to you with a strategic plan for how we're going to scale this mountain together and do it in the most efficient way possible. And so all of that is uncovered and presented by the end of onboarding. And the people who are typically the best equipped to go on that journey with us are clients who have a stable business by this point and again are at that point where they're like, okay, I've covered my living expenses. I might have already funded my emergency savings. What we're seeing in terms of the best success is women who have about like $50,000 to $100,000 a year that they be putting towards their wealth creation journey. It's taken a little while to kind of get to exactly what that is because no two cases are alike. And sometimes people have an inheritances, or sometimes people have a high income earning spouse. So I don't like to say that as a hard and fast rule because, again, it's a case by case basis that I need to evaluate. But what we're seeing in terms of like momentum is the women that are in that place, which typically tends to be a high 6 to 7 figure business owner. Like that's really fun because we can actually start integrating all of the recommendations.
So I have some clients say investing is so complex and they don't feel trust into the market. What should we say to them? Even they have the money, they have a cash, but they don't know what to do with it. And of course, I normally say like with inflation, your cash is just lose the values every single year. Apparently, they have the money, but what will help them to move forward with investing and have a like the belief that this is the better option and a very good well vehicle for them to achieve their financial goal?
Yeah, so I think this comes down to a couple things. I think that it's intangible for people. So
Yeah,
it's really hard for them to wrap their heads around
yeah,
because you can't touch it, feel it, visit it like you can a real estate property. But the crazy thing is the compound interest of the markets is just so wildly incredible and can't even be compared to real estate, really, when you think about it. The other thing that cracks me up often is when people say that the markets are boring and they want to do angel investing, because what they don't realize is when you're investing in the markets, you're investing in the best entrepreneurs in the world. Like
yes,
these are the cream of the crop. These are the people, most businesses fail.
yeah,
And my grandfather was a venture capitalist. So I saw the failure rate of small businesses, but it's like angel investing gets seen as this like sexy thing. And I always say, if you're going to write an angel investing check, like get ready to never see that money again. Just mentally depart with it. Whereas with the markets, it's like you are investing in the best of the best. And they have to report how good they are on a quarterly basis. There are so many checks and balances in the public markets And I think the most important thing when it comes to the markets is it has a predictable risk return profile. Whereas when you're looking at the private markets, there's no track record there. There's no predictable risk return profile.
Yeah.
So a lot of it comes down to education.
Yeah.
And the best analogy that I was ever given at the start of my career
Yeah.
is watching the markets is like watching someone walk up a mountain with a yo-yo. And when you look at that, you're like, okay, so I just put my money in the market and it ends up looking like one half of a mountain because of compound interest.
Yeah.
Like, that's absolutely incredible. We have a chart that we show clients where $1 grew into $37,000 over a little less than 100 years for doing absolutely nothing. You didn't have to make a sale. You didn't have to hire an employee. You didn't even have to get out of bed for that dollar to make $37,000. Like, that is absolutely incredible. What happens is that people pay attention to the yo-yo. They pay attention to the person with the yo-yo walking up the mountain. They pay attention to the yo-yo rather than zooming out and seeing that it's actually a person walking up a mountain with a yo-yo. And what the yo-yo is the day-to-day headlines. So talking about, are we going into a recession or Tesla's down 40%? It's like that yo-yo will be going up and down constantly. But what people fail to realize is the yo-yo is going up and down as we are making our way up the mountain. So the yo-yo is actually completely irrelevant. All it's doing is toying with your emotions. And the whole reason why that is because news outlets are supported by advertisers and they have to sell headlines. They have to tell stories because they have to get eyeball. When you think about it, investing is actually so simple. Less is more. Another analogy that was great is investing is like a bar of soap. The more you touch it, the smaller it gets. So just don't touch it. Just set a strategic asset allocation. Like, stick with your habits. Habits are also reaffirmed in the market because dollar cost averaging, which is putting, let's say, $1,000 into the market month after month after month, you actually get better returns, dollar cost averaging, than you do trying to time the market. So all the market does is reaffirm simplicity and habits. It's just there's so much confusion in the media and the industry.
Yeah.
But that's like, honestly, as part of our onboarding process, we have an investment overview call. And it's one of my favorite ones because it's the time where we really get to like dispel all those myths with clients. You could get me going on a whole nother hour.
That's great. But and I think it's true too. Like the media's their job is to always have like the bad news, the attention, the like crazy thing happening on the markets and people. And one of the things I think in the psychology of money, some got have a book I read. They say we always make the decision when we have a high emotional situation, and that's normally lead to like most of disaster decision that we ever make. And if we like just patient and ignore all this new and all this information in the economy, we probably like stick with the root of everything that we already make, or you say the market allocation or the allocation for your assets, then eventually everything will just swing down and just grow up with your portfolio and all that. But normally people feel like heart attack when they see all this like losing money like day by day or by month. So I totally agree with it. Okay, so we can talk about what is your tip for the female entrepreneur or woman like know more about money and financial planning and things that they need to do to take care of their money and risk their financial goal in the correct way? Because I know so many people they make money and then they lose all of that money. And so what should they do to maintain that and actually build a wealth of legacy? Because so many women actually start from the family and have zero money to start with. And so if they are the first generation that will actually make it in the business and want to have a legacy for their younger children and grandchildren and all that, what should they do to make sure that they will reach that goal?
So I would say focus on what you can control. And one of the things that you can control is cash flow. whether that is making more or spending less or a combination of the two. That is something that you are actually completely in control of. And that is the essential starting place for wealth creation, because you need to create cash flow, positive cash flow, to create wealth. You need to start building assets. And so many people, that is the hardest part, that starting point of actually building that savings muscle, because it feels really boring for a while. It's kind of like when you're getting in shape. It's like the first day that you go to the gym and do the sit-ups, it's not going to feel that great because it's going to be hard and you're going to leave the gym with the same body that you walked in with, or so it appears. But if you keep doing that day after day after day, eventually you're going to start seeing the six pack. Same thing with creating wealth. If you start building that savings muscle, day one, it's not going to feel like, oh my God, this is so exciting. But we actually had a client reach out last week and she messaged me and she like could not believe her portfolio made $115,000 last year and she didn't have to do anything for that.
Yeah.
But that took so much coaching and behavioral management to get her to that point. That was 18 months ago that we started on that journey. And now she's finally seeing, oh my gosh, I made six figures without having to do anything.
Yeah.
So keep the temporal perspective in mind and keep in mind that this is a journey. It's a long-term journey, and just focus on the inputs. And then I would say the other thing is start researching advisors that are out there, because to that example, so much of what we do is behavioral management. And, I give the fitness example, like I'm a certified fitness instructor, but I still pay for classes because if I don't show up to the class, I have to pay a $12 fee. So put yourself in situations where you know you're going to be successful. I'm essentially paying for the result. I'm paying for the accountability. I'm paying to show up and not have to think and have someone else tell me what to do. Like for me, I need to put myself in successful situations. And so hiring advisors around me and coaches around me, that helps me get the best out of me.
The thing you say about accountability, like the partner, I saw this with my client too, like the client that on accounting advisory every month or fractional CFO every month. If they meet there every month by the schedule, they normally see the progression. But like the people who skip all of these monthly meetings, eventually it make them slip over to this love of regular review your financial. And I think that's happened the same way with you working with a financial advisor. Like if you don't meet them often, don't share your question, don't ask the question, and have them to help you with the decision itself, you eventually just lose that habit. And you will like make a decision based on the way that you think, not necessarily like for the benefit of your financial goal. Because sometimes the goal is something that we aim for, but we not be there yet. And you need to have like direction, instruction, and also like support, accountability partner to help you to go toward that. So I totally agree.
Yeah, and this is where our worlds go so well together, because your world reinforces my world.
Yeah.
You know? Like the best clients are the ones that are showing up to meet with you monthly, and then that creates money for us to play with. So that's why I love collaborating with companies like yours, because it's just like it makes everyone's life so much easier, honestly.
Yeah. So I have another question. So sometimes people, once they make the money, right, you can feel that out, or Kaitlyn now I have like $200,000-300,000 per month. And now there's so many options for investing, like stock, bond, cash saving, or buy real estate, or like invest into another business. Like, what should they do?
So it always has to come back to two things. The first thing is the financial plan.
Yeah.
The financial plan is always where we're going to go with that information to map everything out and give every dollar a job. It's going to come back to your values and your passion. Like, I am really not that interested in real estate. We renovated a house and it took nearly everything out of me to make like small decisions. And just deal with contractors and go to Home Depot. Like, I don't want to go to Home Depot for like another 10 years. So that is not my love language. I would rather like be on the playground with my kids. But we have plenty of clients that love like interior design or might be married to someone who's handy. So that fits into their life a little bit better. So it's going to come down to your values. You know, my husband and I both met in asset management. We're highly comfortable with the markets. So I can tell you that the majority of our wealth is probably going to be in the markets. Now, having said that, we did just set up an LLC last week and we still own a condo and we're putting that condo in the LLC and we're renting that condo out. That entered our life organically. So my husband and I lived in that condo, had 2 kids there. Obviously, the condo got too small, so we had to move to a different house. But fortunately, we were able to hold on to the condo. It has a low interest rate, and then we were able to buy our existing house. So we do have real estate. We are now landlord, but I didn't like go out and look to become a landlord. That just organically entered my life. And now that's going to be another asset on our balance sheet, hopefully another wealth creation tool. I am not naive to the fact that we could have some foundation issues this year. We could have to fix the roof this year where all of that rental income is now going toward fixing the foundation or fixing the roof. That kind of annoys me about real estate. I don't love the unpleasant surprises, but I see long term, okay, someone else is now paying our mortgage and that's going to appreciate over time. So that's a good example of every asset class is going to have pros and cons to it. There's no silver bullet. And that's probably my biggest pet peeve with Instagram is you go on Instagram and people are trying to sell you silver bullets. And there's no such thing. There's no like one fix to wealth creation. So you just have to be familiar with the pros and the cons and know how it fits into your overall financial plan. So that's why this is, at the end of the day, a customized process, because it's going to be totally custom to the family's goals and values and passions, really.
Yeah. I have probably like one of the last questions. So some people will think like I have a couple clients that have a very high earning, like their W-2 earnings already like $600,000 per year. But because their W-2 earnings is very high, they face the problem that they need to pay very high tax because there's no other deduction or other option. You think that with these people, they just buy the bullets to pay the high tax brackets right now and invest into like stock markets or investment because like they max out all retirement, like 401k and all of that. So the rest of this will be like brokerage account if they go to the stock market. Then it doesn't have, like if it's investment in the stock markets, it doesn't have them in terms of tax. But it's eventually build them the portfolio and the wealth for life for the next 10 year, 20 year. So they do buy that bullets and do those things. So they just like, okay, they come out buy like real estate, get the appreciation or invest to other business that they can tax some kind of like loss or deduction on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say in working with everyday Americans and then working with ultra high net worth people, that to me was the glaring difference.
Yeah.
So, majority of Americans, their wealth is wrapped up in their house and their 401k because people have to pay a mortgage and their 401k comes out of their paycheck.
Yeah.
So, for the vast majority of Americans,
Yeah.
we're their 2 biggest assets.
Yeah.
What sets ultra high net worth people apart is they have massive taxable portfolios.
Yeah.
So to get into the brokerage account, they would have had to pay taxes on that money. So like there's really no way around it. But now their taxable portfolios are paying them $400,000 a year that they don't have to go out and make. We absolutely want to make sure that we are maxing tax saving opportunities. But at the end of the day, you also have to recognize that paying taxes is a side effect of being successful. And one of the toughest things is when people are just so focused on saving taxes that they're missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
They're not seeing that like, okay, but like paying taxes is allowing you to build a multi-million-dollar portfolio, and that's going to actually allow you to achieve financial independence, and that's what you really want.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, you're going to have to pay taxes, but again, this is a wealth creation event for you.
Yeah.
A piece of it is going to taxes, but you are building assets and you are building wealth. So you have to see that you can't, I know this analogy gets used a lot, but it's like you can't let the tail wag the dog.
Yeah.
The dog is the wealth. Like, how do we build the wealth? And that's where we have to bring it back to the financial plan.
Yeah.
Because when we're able to articulate that and model that within the context of a financial plan, people relax a bit more. If they're just seeing they have a $90,000 tax bill with no reference for what it means for them long term, they're just going to be mad that they have a $90,000 tax bill. But if they're able to see, yes, you have a $90,000 tax bill and you're going to have $5.5 million in 4 years, they're a little more okay writing the $90,000 tax bill check.
I do tax all the time, and anytime the people talk or see the tax bill, they feel so stressed about it. But I
Yeah.
mean, like this is very hard for you to like not paying any tax and build like tremendous like portfolio and other assets as well, because one of those will need to pay tax on. If we there's no way we can ignore all of it, like in terms of legally at all.
I can promise you there is no such thing as a $0 tax bill.
Yeah.
And if you are working off of a $0 tax bill, it's either going to be reflected, like let's say you're doing that in real estate, it's going to be reflected somewhere. It'll be reflected in the cost basis of the property.
Yeah.
Eventually, you will have to acknowledge that tax unless there's like a step up at death. So I've never seen anyone have a $0 tax bill and not get in a fight with the IRS. I have seen people get in a fight with the IRS, and it's not something I want to check off my list in this
Yeah.
tax lifetime. Yeah, I think it's just like you have to know the limit. And so that's why if we can show, yes, you're writing a check for 90,000, but you're making millions, it lessens the blow. So that's why the holistic picture is so important.
I totally agree for that. I mean, I deal with it every year, so I understand on it. To convince with them there's reason for you to pay tax in some way. But I think like the last question, so we all build a well and all everything, and from the starting point to reach our financial goal, what should be the insurance, the protection part that people need to pay attention to so that become a legacy for many generations?
So protection comes in a few different forms. It comes from good insurance planning. It comes from good estate planning. On the insurance planning side of things, I'm a huge fan of term insurance because it is cheap, it is simple, it is appropriate for the majority of people. However, business owners get sold permanent life insurance policies all the time by insurance salespeople who make commissions off of the policies, and business owners are great prospects for insurance salespeople because they can make money off of them today. Whereas in the wealth management industry, because of that AUM model I was referencing, most wealth managers aren't really paying attention to business owners until they have some massive liquidity event. So I will say permanent life insurance is appropriate when we start getting into potentially needing to pay estate taxes. Now, for most people, that's not going to be the case because right now the estate tax limit is so high for a married couple. For a married couple, it's over 26 million. So, not until we're looking at like a $30 million estate, potentially, do we really need to start evaluating permanent life insurance? Unless it's that high income situation that we're talking about, maybe we'll look at it then because there's a tax deferred growth component there. I'm getting away in the weeds here. But anyway, on the insurance side, I'm a huge fan of term insurance, unless it's a more nuanced situation, then we can look at permanent. On the estate planning side of things, you really want to make sure you just have your basic documents in place. So a will, a healthcare proxy, and a durable power of attorney. The healthcare proxy is like the who pulls the plug decision. So like who would make a decision if something were to happen to you. The durable power of attorney is who would step in and manage your finances and your assets if you were incapacitated. That type of stuff no one wants to do, but it's super important because I have been part of situations where the decision maker is incapacitated or has passed away. And if you don't do that sort of planning, it can lead a family into potentially a lot of confusion, a lot of drama. So that is the stuff that I would say we make our clients do, because no one's like raising their hand to talk about their death. And then if we get into estate tax issues, like Massachusetts has a really low estate tax exemption. So that's when we need to start looking at like trusts and stuff like that. But with that type of stuff, one of the biggest misconceptions I see is people want to lead with the tool. So they want to lead with like, oh, we need a trust. Well, you may or may not need a trust. You really want to be leading with the situation and the objective. And then we will be working with a trust and estate planning attorney to make the recommendation of what tool we need to be using. So for most Americans, again, just having your will, healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney, and potentially a living trust, those they call them the core four. Those core four documents should be plenty for most people.
When should we start to do it? Like even we young, like some people like 30, 35 years old, even like under 40 years old.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as soon as you have assets, you should do it. Like as soon as you start your first job, really making decisions like if you have life insurance through your employer, deciding who your beneficiary is for the life insurance. We started taking our estate planning seriously and actually got an estate plan done when I was pregnant with our first child. But also, like a life event is a hugely important time, because for me, the big thing was having in writing that I should have mentioned that as well. Guardianship documents, if you have young children, it was very important for me to have in writing who I wanted my kids to go to if something were to happen to Jake and me. Again, think about like if you're not here, someone else is going to be making that decision if you. So the more pre-planning that you can do for stuff like that, the better. And so those are conversations that take thought as well and should be between spouses and should be between family members. I had to call family members to just say, hey, is this okay with you? Like, if this happened, would you be willing to take on this responsibility? So again, it takes thought, but I feel so much better knowing that those documents are in place for my kids.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, that's you do like pretty well, because I don't think that many people like young, they think about it at all. They think like, okay, I need to be like 50 years old or 55 or 60 years old to actually think about all that. But it's something we try to avoid, but like you can't avoid and you can't predict for all these things. So, but I think we have a great conversation today. Thank you so much for your guidance and your tip and your trick, and we appreciate your time.
Well, this was so fun. Thank you for letting me share, Fiona. I really enjoyed it.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.